Okay, how many Poles blow themselves up in London or any other place in the world? That's the question I keep repeating.
Poland's Dominik Tarczyński sits down with Mehdi Hasan. The very first question calls him a racist, not a warm-up. A word for that, isn't there, Dominik? What follows is 13 minutes of a Polish MP refusing to flinch. He answers the charge and hands it straight back. Wait until he asks where Saudi Arabia and Qatar are in all this. Watch the host reach for the same script over and over. Watch it stop working. This is a border argument the outrage machine cannot win. Let's get into it.
Dominik Tarczyński, thank you for joining me on Upfront. You're an MP and an MEP-elect for Poland's Law and Justice Party, which was recently re-elected to government and which is often criticised for being anti-immigrant, anti-refugee. But actually, you're not anti-immigrant or anti-refugee. You're okay with white Christian immigrants from Ukraine. You've taken around 2 million of them in. You're just not okay, it seems, with brown Muslim refugees from the Middle East. White people fine, brown people not fine. There's a word for that, isn't there, Dominik?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. It has nothing to do with your color. It has nothing to do with the religion. I keep repeating it for last 4 or 5 years. It's all about safety and the common sense. It's not about Ukrainians who are allowed to come to Poland. It's about illegal migrants who wants to cross our borders. And if you're brown, white, yellow, or whatever, if you want to cross our border illegally, you're not allowed. We are reacting.
Watch how that opens. Not a question, an accusation. Poland took in 2 million Ukrainians fleeing the war. That generosity gets used as evidence against him. White people fine, brown people not fine. Tarczyński doesn't flinch. Not color, not religion. Safety and common sense. Cross a Polish border illegally, and the answer is no. Warsaw set that rule years ago and kept it. 30 seconds in, the trap is set, and he walks over it.
Well, first of all, plenty of people are coming into Europe legally as asylum seekers. You have a legal right to asylum from places like Syria. But you say it's not about religion. You said, quote, we will not receive even one Muslim because this is what we promised. You didn't say illegal immigrants. You said we will not receive even one Muslim.
It has nothing to do with the Muslim religion. It's not Islamophobia, as someone's trying to tell us. It's all about this moment and this fact that at 2015, Angela Merkel started this madness, and now this is a problem about Muslims mainly coming to Europe. I'm surprised they are not going to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or any other rich Muslim countries. They would feel much better, isn't it?
There it is. The quote the host built his whole show around. Not one Muslim. And Tarczyński refuses to be dragged into a religion argument. He goes to 2015 instead. Angela Merkel opens the door, and the rest of Europe gets handed the consequences. Then he asks the question that hangs over the next 10 minutes. Why is nobody flying to Saudi Arabia? Why not Qatar? Keep that question in your head. He comes back to it, and it never gets answered.
You say Angela Merkel and her madness. I mean, Angela Merkel followed the law. The EU has law. There's a refugee convention. There's a universal declaration of human rights. The EU Advocate General, which advises the European Court of Justice, found this week that your country broke EU law in 2015 when Poland refused to share the refugee burden. So it's your country, your government, Dominik, that's undermining European values, European laws, not immigrants, not refugees, not Muslims.
No, not at all. This judgment was not about Poland only. It was about Hungary and others. And also, this judgment, this sentence was about all countries which did not fulfill the expectations. You have to remember that the quota system which failed was very clear about the numbers. So even Germany and France did not receive as many as they should. For us, that was very clear. In 2015, we promised that we will never agree for the quota system, and our promises are kept. The whole migration crisis, it's a global thing. Europe is not responsible for what is happening in Syria. Poland is not responsible for what is happening in Iraq, in Syria, in other places. We never had any colonies. So if this problem is a global problem, where is Saudi Arabia? Where is Qatar? Where are the other Arab countries, rich Arab countries, which should help? They can help. Mecca is a great example. 100,000 tents used only once a year during the pilgrimage. 4 million people can take this shelter and live there for a year. They're empty. Nice, beautiful tents, air-conditioned tents. They are empty.
The host brings a legal ruling. Tarczyński brings receipts. That judgment wasn't about Poland alone. Hungary was in it, and so were Germany and France, who missed their own quotas. Then comes the line of the night. Mecca. 100,000 air-conditioned tents, used once a year, standing empty. 4 million people could shelter there. Poland never had colonies in Syria or Iraq. So why is a country that broke nothing carrying a crisis it didn't cause? No answer comes.
Well, you do realize that tiny Lebanon's taken in over 1 million Syrians. 1 in 5 of the population in Lebanon is a refugee. Turkey has more Syrian refugees than any country in the world. So Muslim majority countries, some are doing their part, some aren't. I agree with you. You also say in other interviews that this is about Christian culture. This is about Europe being Christian. Now you tell me, no, it's all about legality. I feel like you're all over the place. Are you objecting to refugees from Syria because they're not Christian or because they shouldn't be in Poland? Which one? You seem to be offered different excuses at different times.
You have to apply. Polish law is very clear about it. Submit your documents, apply for a visa, get us the criminal back check, and then we're going to decide. We are not forced by any law to agree for that. It's the same in America. Even if you have a visa and you're trying to enter US, you still might hear, no, you're not allowed, and there's no explanation. No one from U.S. side, they don't have.
Notice what just happened. The host says some Muslim majority countries are doing their part, agreeing with the point he came in to attack. Then he accuses his guest of being all over the place. Tarczyński gives him the actual process: submit documents, apply for a visa, pass a criminal background check. Then Poland decides. It's the same at any American airport. Visa in hand, entry still refused, no explanation owed. That's not bigotry. That's a border.
If you said, if you hadn't said, we will not receive even one Muslim, if you hadn't bragged about the fact that you don't have mosques in Poland, I mean, it sounds like you don't want them there because you're anti-Muslim and anti-Islam.
So let me go from the legal path to the society. So legally, you have to apply, and legally, you're allowed to apply, and this is up to us if we agree to have you in Poland. That's number one. Then our society, our structure. I keep repeating that in many mosques, we can hear about hijrah. For us, homogenic society, Christian society is a value. For me, multicultural society, it's not a value. I used to live in London. I used to live there for 5 years. I used to work in US, and I see the fruits of multiculturalism. For me, it's not a virtue. For me, it's not a value. So we have a right to think about our future in a way we want to. So Christian culture, Roman law, Greek philosophers, these are the virtues for us.
And here's the part the clip farms cut out. He lived in London for 5 years. He worked in the United States. He isn't describing multiculturalism from a Warsaw armchair. He watched it up close and decided it isn't for him. Christian culture, Roman law, Greek philosophy, those are the things he says Poland is keeping. You can disagree with every word of that, but notice the host has no counter-argument to it. He just changes the subject to Sharia.
Sharia law in Europe.
Okay,
I'm the member. Let me finish.
Having Muslims in your country doesn't mean you have Sharia law. You mentioned London. The mayor of London is a Muslim. There's no Sharia law. Let me ask you this. You mentioned London. Some would say it's hypocritical that you don't want Muslims in Poland because let me finish my question.
Where the Sharia is present.
Let me finish the question. Many would say it's hypocritical that you say you don't want Muslim immigrants in your country because they commit crimes, there's a security threat, and yet you hear exactly the same rhetoric about Polish immigrants in the UK from right-wing politicians and media there. They say the Poles are groping women, they're feckless, they're criminals, they won't integrate. Don't you see the irony or the hypocrisy of treating Muslim immigrants to Poland in the same way that some Britons treat Polish immigrants?
Okay, how many Poles blow themselves up in London or any other place in the world? That's the question I keep repeating.
There is a lot of crime carried out by Polish immigrants, according to the right-wing press.
Killed themselves and others because of their religion or hate.
Dominic, your argument doesn't work. Just last month in the UK...
The question was very specific.
I'm answering your question.
How many of them blowed themselves?
There's the moment. The host spends a full minute building his analogy. Muslims in Poland, Poles in Britain, Same rhetoric, same prejudice. Tarczyński answers with one question. How many Poles blow themselves up in London? The analogy dies right there. Anti-Polish prejudice in Britain is real and ugly. It also isn't a security file. Watch the host swerve. Suddenly it's about the right-wing press and a rape case. Anything but the question he was asked.
Let me answer your question in this way. A Polish immigrant was charged with the rape and murder of a British student last month. How would you feel if people in the UK started saying, we don't want Poles here anymore. We don't want rapists and murderers here. That's what you say about Muslims. You generalize about all Muslims in the same way that some on the right in the UK generalize about Poles. There's a lot of anti-Polish racism in the UK. Do you not see the irony that you're doing the same thing to Muslims as is done to Poles?
First of all, if anyone committing a crime should be jailed, it doesn't matter. Is it Polish, is it English, or anyone else? That's number one. Crimes which you mentioned are not committed in the name of Allah.
What's that got to do with
the Polish
anything?
side.
I thought
Not
we're talking
in the
about
name
security.
of Christ.
Who cares?
They are just criminals.
We're talking about
and
security threats. But why not?
That's number one.
Why not generalize? Why shouldn't British people generalize about Poles? You're generalizing about Muslims. Not all Muslims are terrorists, as you know.
But most terrorists are Muslims.
Here's the distinction the host keeps refusing to engage. A murder is a murder. Jail the man. But an attack staged for an ideology is a different problem. The ideology recruits the next one. Bataclan. Nice. That's a security file, not a crime blotter. Tarczyński overreaches on the wording and gets caught. Fine. The underlying point stands untouched. And listen to the reply. What's that got to do with anything? Motive. That's what it's got to do with everything.
That's not true, as you know. In fact, that's not actually true. Most of the far-right terrorist attacks in the US this year were from far-right Christians.
If they committed a crime, they should be...
It's funny you say most terrorists are Muslim. This year, one of the worst terrorist attacks that we saw was in New Zealand.
Not Christians, mostly non-believers.
One of the worst terrorist attacks this year, one of the most high-profile, was the murder of more than 50 Muslims in New Zealand by a Christian far-right white supremacist.
Yeah, and he's jailed. That's it.
So what? So Muslims are jailed as well? What's your point? Should I blame all white Christians for what that man in New Zealand did?
My point is that the difference between our reaction after the New Zealand was condemnation. I do condemn that, everyone condemning it. After the terror attacks, we can hear from imams. That's the reaction.
That's not
they are
true,
happy,
as you know.
and they want to kill all the infidels. So that's
a lie,
the difference
Dominik.
between Western civilization.
Imams across the world did not applaud terrorist attacks.
Christchurch was a monstrous crime, and Tarczyński condemns it flatly. 51 people were murdered at prayer. Nobody on that stage defends the shooter. So watch what the host does with that. He tries to build a symmetry out of it. But the point Tarczyński is reaching for is narrower than the host wants it to be. Hate preachers exist. They are documented, prosecuted, deported. Pretending that problem isn't real doesn't make anyone safer. He overshoots on the word all, and the host jumps on the wording instead of the problem.
Okay, you can Google also the Charlie Hebdo attacks.
Okay, you say this is a lie.
It is a lie to say all imams applaud.
News, I can tell.
Okay, let me ask you this question.
You've got hate preachers.
There are hate
what
preachers,
this sentence
indeed.
means?
That's not all imams, though. You said all imams clapping. Let me ask you this, Dominik. After the Charlie Hebdo attacks, you had the King of Jordan.
There you go. You don't have hate preachers in the Christian churches.
That's not true either. After the Charlie Hebdo attacks, you had the King of Jordan, the Prime Minister of Turkey, the Foreign Minister of Egypt, the President of the Palestinian Authority, numerous leaders from the Muslim majority world literally marched through the streets of Paris in solidarity with the non-Muslim victims of those attacks. I don't remember seeing you or any other member of the Polish government marching in Christchurch, New Zealand in solidarity with the Muslim victims of that attack. I don't remember seeing you marching in Christchurch.
Now the host plays his best card. Charlie Hebdo, the King of Jordan, the Prime Minister of Turkey, leaders marching through Paris. It's a strong card, and Tarczyński has to answer it. But look at what's being demanded here. March in New Zealand, or you're a hypocrite. A Polish MP is being asked to buy a plane ticket to prove he's not complicit in a crime committed by a man he's never met. Watch his answer. It's the bluntest thing he says all night.
All this solidarity candles and all this painting on the floor, it's a joke.
But where was yours?
We don't need this kind
where
of
was your march? I don't remember seeing your march in New Zealand.
Real action.
Dominik, I don't remember seeing you and the Polish government marching in New Zealand. Answer that. Why didn't you do what Muslim leaders did
because
and
we
march
behave differently.
in Christchurch? No,
we don't need marches. We have our borders, which are
candles and chalk drawings on the pavement. He calls it a joke, and half of Europe just felt that. Because what does a march actually change? Paris kept happening. Nice kept happening. His answer is borders you can actually defend. You can call that cold, you cannot call it a dodge. He answered the question that was asked.
Safe.
That's got nothing to do with the question. A Christian far-right nationalist carried out an attack in New Zealand. If you're saying Muslims should condemn a Muslim attack, which they did, why didn't you go to New Zealand and condemn that attack? Why didn't you march like Muslim leaders did in Paris? Why didn't you march in Christchurch?
If you think that these Muslims, these preachers, these imams are so peaceful, let them go to Saudi Arabia, let them go to Qatar. If you want to be a refugee, you have to flee to the first safe country, neighbor country. Then you have to apply, you have to prove who you are. And now we are having people in Europe, Poland is not a neighbor of Syria, without documents or with 5 passports, the same picture and different names. That's just a fact from our interior ministers. So it's all about safety. You are trying to put the whole subject in a box of Islamophobia. Even if no believer will gonna come, or Buddhist, we will not let him in if he's illegal. That's
The host asks the same question for the 4th time. And Tarczyński does something the host never does. He brings a fact. First safe country. That's not Polish policy, that's the Refugee Convention. Poland does not share a border with Syria, and his interior ministry is finding people with 5 passports, same photo, 5 different names. That's a document, not a slur. Watch the host walk past it and go back to Christchurch.
it. Let me go back to my question, which you avoided answering. The Christchurch shooter was an immigrant. He was a Christian. He was a white nationalist who killed Muslims. And he had on his weaponry references to a battle in which a king of Poland defeated Muslim invaders. He had the name of a Polish military commander on one of his weapons. So I ask again, why didn't you, according to your own logic, go to Christchurch and disown him? Say this has nothing to do with us, nothing to do with Poland or Christianity. That's what you expect of Muslims. Why didn't you do that in New Zealand, I ask?
Well, thank you very much. Thank God for King Sobieski. He stopped Muslims in Vienna. Thank God for King Sobieski.
That's what the terrorists said as well, by the way.
But I'm not going to react on any idiot who is trying to use our king and beautiful history for a terror attack.
So the argument is now that a Polish king from 1683 is somehow Poland's problem. The shooter scrawled Sobieski's name on a rifle. That makes the murderer a liar about history, not Poland guilty of history. And Tarczyński refuses the guilt entirely. Thank God for Sobieski, he says. He stopped an invading army at the gates of Vienna. I'm not reacting to an idiot who steals our king for a massacre. That is how you refuse a frame.
I got to ask the question though, and I want to talk about the broader cultural point, because you have said in a previous interview this is about culture. This is about preserving Christian culture in Europe. I'm saying to you, white supremacists have carried out horrific terrorist attacks this year in El Paso, Texas, San Diego, California,
right.
Christchurch in New Zealand. And they have talked about stopping mosques, stopping the invasion of Muslims, protecting Christian culture. It's virtually the same language that is used by your party and by you. There is an overlap. We can see that with our eyes. It's the same rhetoric.
No, the difference is we are not shooting. If someone is a terrorist or killer or criminal, should be jailed.
And there's the final move. Your words sound like the words of mass murderers. El Paso, San Diego, Christchurch. Therefore, your immigration policy is complicit. Tarczyński's answer is 7 words long. The difference is we are not shooting. That's it. That's the whole rebuttal. And it's unanswerable. A democratically elected parliament voting on visa rules is not a man with a rifle. Watch the host try one more time anyway.
You're not shooting, but are you inciting the violence by using that rhetoric of invasions and stopping mosques?
Do not compare me to the criminal.
I'm comparing your rhetoric, not you. I'm saying the rhetoric is similar, is it not? Or are you denying that? It sounds like you're agreeing.
First of all, as I said, it's against our law. That's number one. It's against our culture. And the culture is very important. As I told you, we are a Christian country. We don't want hijra in Poland. We don't want Poland being taken over by Muslims, Buddhists, or someone else. For us, Christianity as identity, as our DNA, is very important. And our government has the right to say no. And no one will ever force us to take Muslims, Buddhists, non-believers in huge numbers. But we are helping by sending money, because our government is very straight. We have to help in a place of the conflict, in Syria, in Iraq. That's it. Do not force us to do things which our society doesn't want. That's why our government was elected.
13 minutes. One accusation, repeated a dozen different ways. Racist, Islamophobe, hypocrite, and at the end of it, Tarczyński is still standing on the same 3 sentences he started with. Apply legally. Prove who you are. Poland decides. That's not an exotic position. It's the immigration law of almost every country on earth, including the one the host was broadcasting from. What this exchange really showed is how thin the moral pressure gets when someone simply refuses to accept it. No apology, no flinch, no rebrand. Do you think Tarczyński exposed a real double standard on Europe's borders? Or was Mehdi Hasan right to keep pressing him on Christchurch? Drop your thoughts in the comments.